Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to Island Space Caribbean Museum, a place where Caribbean cultures unite. It is my honor to be with you tonight as your host and moderator for tonight's panel, The Evolution of Reggae, Breaking Barriers and Crossing Borders. I am Andrea McDowell John Baptiste, and I put in my middle name because I wanted some recognition from our friends in Jamaica. And I'm a business consultant, a radio talk show host, a lecturer, adjunct faculty, and a proud board member of Island Space, which is a Florida nonprofit museum and the home of the world's first Caribbean museum. Island Space, again, is a place where Caribbean cultures unite.
And Island Space Caribbean Museum is a first of its kind heritage institution representing more than 30 countries of the region. As part of our cultural programming, this February, Reggae Month, we've brought together a panel of presenters well seasoned in the business, marketing, management, production, and promotion of one of the Caribbean's premier cultural exports, reggae music. Now, there's a lot of information looking back at the history of what we call reggae and all its Jamaican-related genres, including mento, ska, rocksteady, lovers rock, reggae, and dancehall. But many music lovers don't know that genres like hip-hop, garage, reggaeton, tropical house, and Afro beats all have roots in reggae. Today, we'll learn about the new history, the evolution and fusion of reggae, how Jamaican musicians are helped or hurt by it, and what's next.
Join me in welcoming our esteemed panel of industry insiders, business leaders, community advocate. First off, let me introduce to you Gary DJ GQ Hardy. He is obviously DJ, music producer. You may hear him on Y100 Miami iHeartRadio, as well as Bob Marley's Tough Gong Radio on Sirius XM Radio. He has been Kevin Little's tour DJ since Turn Me On, you know the song. And in October of 2020, his album, Is It You, charted to #1 on iTunes Reggae within hours. Y'all heard me, hours. And it went to #10 on the Billboard Reggae charts just 2 weeks later. He's also part of Remix Top 30 with Hollywood Hamilton in 150 cities. Currently, one of the biggest syndicated shows in the US on iHeart or Premiere networks. Thank you for being with us this evening, GQ.
Man, I need you to represent me. That was an amazing intro.
Thank you. We'll talk offline for sure.
Yeah.
And next up, we have Abishai Hoilett, with over 17 years experience in the music business, where he started in high school, Campion College, big up, Campionites, unite, and as a selector on a sound system owned by he and his friends. He is an artist manager for the fast rising Kabaka Pyramid and A&R for Bevel Rock, which is an indie label and a management company, where he also manages the company's deal with the Marleys Ghetto Youths International. He is director of JaRIA and of JaRIA and chairman of the Reggae Month Committee, where he heads up a portfolio of activities that include concerts, panels, university lectures, and honor awards for music icons. Amazing. And we thank you for being here to lend your wealth of knowledge, Abishai Hoilett.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Andrea. Happy to be here. Yeah, man. Honored to be here. Yeah,
and certainly, I'm bringing a little girl power to this panel. Our esteemed award-winning music journalist, Patricia Meschino, winner of the 2018 Golden Pen Award through Reggae Sumfest. She's been writing about Caribbean music for nearly 30 years. I don't know how, because you don't look over 30, my friend. So, and she's been a long-standing contributing writer to Billboard Magazine and Billboard.com, where she's able to give exposure to artists and events that may not be covered in the mainstream media. She has been a staff writer at BobMarley.com, the official Bob Marley website owned by the Marley estate. Patricia has freelanced for numerous media houses, including the Associated Press. Welcome, Pat Meschino. Thank you for being with us this evening.
Oh, it's my honor, Andrea, to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Our pleasure. And next up, we have Lloyd Stanbury, music business consultant, attorney, author. His over 30 years expertise includes the practice of entertainment law, artist management, music production, event promotion, research, creative industry policy development, and lecturing. And it is always my honor to sit at the feet of Lloyd because I always learn so much, and you will tonight too. He is instrumental in the establishment of music associations in Jamaica, such as the Jamaica Association of Composers, Authors, and Publishers. Many of you know it as JCAP. He's also the author of, I think, a reggae Bible called Reggae Roadblocks, a music business development perspective. And he has also received the Order of Distinction from the Jamaican government in August of 2017. He currently is a partner in the arts, culture, and entertainment agency, Majesty Media, and an esteemed member, vice president of our board of directors for this nonprofit, Island Space. Welcome, Lloyd. Thank you for being with us.
And thanks for having me, Andrea.
And thank you for being a crucial part of organizing this panel and bringing this information to the world. And so next up, we have Ewan Simpson, an attorney at law with a Master of Laws in intellectual property. He's been a member of the Jamaican Bar since 2004. He's a mentor, advocate, and lecturer in the areas of intellectual property law, entertainment law, and cultural enterprise management. As an adjunct lecturer at the University of the West Indies, Mona, in the Institute of Caribbean Studies, he also currently is the general manager for legal and corporate services for one of Jamaica's leading regulatory bodies. And Ewan Simpson is also the chairman of the Jamaica Reggae Industry Association. Many of you know it as JaRIA. Welcome, Ewan. I'm guessing Ewan is running just a little bit behind time, and so we will certainly bring him into the studios as soon as he arrives. Thank you. And so with no further ado, I'm going to go ahead and ask us to get this panel started now. We're going to set it off, and we're going to start off with Lloyd Stanbury. Lloyd, I want to ask you to share with us a little bit about the evolution of reggae from the creative perspective. We know that reggae has had a global influence across the region, across the world. We can say pop music borrows from reggae. Talk to us a little bit about that whole process and how we've come to this from the creative perspective.
Yeah, but before I get into it, I would like to commend my fellow panelists, Abishai and Ewan, who is not yet here, for the work that they've been doing, to further the development of Reggae Month. And I'd like to also send a shout out to the Minister of Culture and Entertainment, Babsy Grange, for her efforts in ensuring government support for Reggae Month from day one. With regard to the topic, the evolution of reggae, my comments are made in the context of reggae as a specific music genre and reggae as used to describe all forms of popular music coming out of Jamaica. However we look at it, I think it would be accurate to say that reggae music is music that contains a sound that is distinctly Jamaican in origin. In my opinion, a discussion on the evolution of reggae should include close examination of where the music is coming from, where it is at today, and where it is going in the future. So where is reggae music coming from? From day one, Jamaican popular music was created by mixing the variety of cultural and musical experiences we have been exposed to. We infused our African cultural heritage with what we heard from listening to North American jazz, blues, and rock and roll, as well as the music of our colonizers from Britain and our closest neighbor, Cuba. The creative evolution of our music has been significantly impacted by migration and new technologies that have emerged in recent years. Migration of Jamaicans in the early 20th century, early to mid 20th century, to places like Panama in Central America, Costa Rica, the United Kingdom, and North America, laid the foundation for the global influence of reggae music. It is estimated today that there are more Jamaicans and people of Jamaican descent living outside of the island. As a consequence, the migration and early association of reggae music with Africa, or music, has taken root in more countries on earth than any other music coming out of a developing country. And reggae has also captured a special place in the hearts of people of African descent from all over the world. In recent years, the emergence of the internet and digital technology has made it much easier for information to be shared across geographic borders.
And
this
so
has created...
as you say that, Lloyd, and you talk about the passion of the within Africa and across the borders. Talk to us a little bit about the Afro beats that are emerging, as well as some of the reggaeton, because we know that that's widely a part of the new scene, the dance scene, and so on. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so as a result of what I was just outlining, there are a number of music forms that have emerged. Reggaeton is a prime example, which was popularized in the 1990s by artists primarily from Puerto Rico, such as Daddy Yankee, but it was preceded by what was called reggae en español, which is a Spanish language variety of dancehall that was made popular by El General in Panama. Most of the early reggaeton music tracks that we have heard came out of songs that were produced by Jamaican producers like Bobby Digital and Steely and Clevie. One of the most famous is the Shabba Ranks song called Dembow, which is more or less like the foundation of reggaeton music, and another track called Pokemon Jam that was produced by Steely and Clevie. Those were some of the two early tracks from Jamaica that formed the foundation for what became reggaeton. Reggae in Espanol is more just reggae in Spanish, yeah. And there are, apart from the reggaeton artists, there are roots reggae artists coming out of Latin America who are huge. There is an artist called Dread Marai from Argentina who is approaching like 2 billion views on YouTube. And a lot of Jamaican people that I communicate with and people in the traditional reggae music industry, I've never heard of Dread Marai. And he has like 4.3 million subscribers to his personal YouTube channel. So there are some massive things happening within the Latin American space. Outside of that, we can look at what is happening in North America, in hip hop, for example, through...
Very good. And so as we talk about hip hop, I just want to pause for a moment because, we're talking about the fusion, the crossing of the borders. And I'm going to ask our producer to just play a quick clip from an artist, from a rising artist whose manager also happens to be on the panel with us tonight, wink, wink, about the pyramid. And so because he has, I think, given some encouragement to this level of fusion.
The DJs, them, if you hear a song, if it sound good, if it mix properly, you know what I mean? If the rhymes and connect, just play it, support it from it sound good, you know what I mean? And don't fight even the dancehall artists, them doing the trap hall and everything there, because it's all coming back to that same connection with hip hop and Jamaica and dancehall, and it's just one music. You know what I mean? And the rapper them to do something.
And so as we move on, I'm going to just ask Abishai to jump in on that here because, you know, I don't know if that is considered to be controversial or not, but evolution can't be stopped. What's your take on all of this, Abishai, in terms of the collaboration and the genre fusions that we are seeing, dancehall, trap, and things of that nature? You're muted, my friend. There we
My
go.
apologies. Thank you for having me here tonight. I really appreciate it. And as another platform, as a part of the Reggae Month offerings, I think it's a great addition. And so we hope that we can see it continue. But to answer the question, as you said, evolution can't be stopped. And that has always been a part of Jamaican music in terms of fusing with other different genres and mixing with collaborations with reggae artists and artists from other genres. And I think that process will always continue. So I don't know. I think generally within the industry, almost anything an artist or one of the public figures in the industry says something, it becomes quote unquote controversial. But at its core, I don't think there's anything controversial about it. The music has always been evolving since the 60s to the 70s. We as Jamaica have gifted the world more than 6 genres of music accepted worldwide officially. So with that in mind, I think what has happened is since maybe the 80s, we have stopped naming them. And maybe that is where the issue has now arisen, where we have moved on typically past what people would have called 90s dancehall. I don't think that's what Intense and Alkaline and the new age artists are doing. It's different from 90s dancehall, but nonetheless, we call it dancehall and we still consider it a part of the family of reggae music. So with that in mind, it's difficult to kind of see it as controversial. It's more the natural state of things. And I think what it is, where are people that like success? And until one of the songs that from the experimentation sees a certain level of success, then it doesn't get a mainstream acceptance within our industry, within our culture. And so even with trap hall, the young dancehallers who are doing a lot of trap hall music, they get a lot of backlash. But I'm 100% sure the day one of them find a Billboard hit, that will be out the door and everybody will be hugging it up as dancehall music, as Jamaican, and the fusion with it. But for me, we have always been collaborating, always been fusing the music. We can use the example of reggae music's most famous exponent. I'm wearing his shirt right now, that's Bob Marley. And we know when he struck up the partnership, for instance, with Chris Blackwell, one of the things they did was to overdub his music with new guitar sounds, for instance, that infuse flavors of rock and roll. And those things were also infused in how he was marketed and brought to the world. And so with that kind of entrance to the world market, I think it will be hard upon ourselves to say that we're against fusion or we're against the music evolving. Like Abaka said, I think time is better spent now looking for the good examples that we can support as an industry. I think that's the biggest pitfall that we have, that we have too much detraction and not enough support of the positives.
Oh, that's a very good point. And so, as you talk about what this perspective and it's coming out of Jamaica, talk to us a little bit about what you're seeing in terms of around the world, the global perspective, and in terms of, you know, reggae is Jamaica's largest commodity, and we pushed it out, and everybody is now consuming.
The world is no different. The world is no different. Trust me, the world is no different. I'll use Major Lazer as an example. They have been one of the most successful music groups, whether pop or otherwise, in the last decade or so. We can see from their YouTube streaming numbers, you can see from the crowds at their concerts and how busy they are in terms of their booking schedule. And their music is based completely on fusion. And they're not the only acts out there doing that. I'm sure DJ GQ can back me up on that in terms of a lot of the more successful artists, pop, reggae, hip hop, reggaeton, otherwise, all have elements of different cultures in their music. And that's what makes it special, because each artist infuses a bit of their culture into the music that they're doing, you know what I mean? And so it shows. The Weeknd, for example, who is possibly the top artist right now in the pop world. He recently did the Super Bowl performance. His thing is different because he manages to infuse some of his personal culture. He's from Africa, he's from Ethiopia, and he manages to, without being overbearing, you get that in his music. And I think it's the same way that a lot of Jamaicans and the younger artists have been trying to break out, fuse the sound, try new sounds, experiment, while trying to stay true at the same time to what they know as Jamaican music, what they know as reggae music. And what is a journey, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. It's an evolution.
It's
And
an
so
evolution.
with that, you made a good point. And so I'm going to segue to DJ GQ at this moment, because GQ, talk to us a little bit about how it's being received as you are on Sirius. You are, touring the world as a DJ, putting the sounds together. What are we seeing in terms of the borrowing of the sounds, and also are we getting the global recognition from the powers that be, so to speak, as we should?
So, funny because Abishai said something a while ago about the morphing, and it's gotten so intense right now. And I think it's because attention span, has changed, because now, you can get everything, just like what was being said earlier by Mr. Stanbury with the internet and being able to get things. So now I find parties where back in the day you'd go to a dance hall party and you just hear dance hall, versus now you have to hear a little hip hop in it. You have to hear a little bit of something else in it. It's a mosh pit now. It's a little bit of everything, But we as Jamaican people have a little issue, because just like what Abishai was saying, is we kind of fight against each other in these little weird ways. But the thing is, reggae music in the core market in Jamaica is so intense that we still come out with music, like dozens of records daily. You know what I mean? It's like constantly, and we're constantly evolving in music when it comes to that's why with the whole dancehall trap thing now, because we're taking things now like that and evolving the music, but we're evolving so fast. I feel like the rest of the world isn't really on our page, so you find that like we're competing with ourselves right now. And then he was talking about the 90s dancehall. The rest of the world could relate to 90s dancehall more, because that's what kind of broke across the globe, other than anything older, Bob and all that type of stuff. So it's very, there's so much, there's so many little parts of this equation that is kind of really hard to sum up in something just as small as this, but it's how should I put it? I definitely feel it has something to do with the attention span of the public now, why you find this more diversity and needing more. You can't just sit down and listen to one genre of music for 4 hours through the night if you're at a party.
That's so interesting, because you're connecting it to just our old, I think, human evolution as well. And we're seeing the music, create. And so Ewan has just joined us. Ewan, thank you so much for being with us. And I want to just ask you, Ewan, as we're talking about the creative perspective of the evolution of reggae, greetings and welcome.
Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure. It is our pleasure. We're happy you're here. And so, as DJ GQ just spoke to kind of the outpacing, it sounds
Right.
like, in summary, right? The creation is outpacing almost the market. Could you speak a little bit to that in terms of from a overall industry perspective that you're seeing maybe out through JaRIA and those connections?
Well, Jamaica has always, for quite a while, for decades now, Jamaica has been punching above its weight class in production, in entertainment production, and certainly in musical products. And we have continued to do that. It is just a part of our DNA. It's just who we are, and we have created. I think we have created so many genres of music. Some argue 7, some argue 8, some argue more, and as it stands now, it may even be growing. Because as a people, we are born out of creativity. So I don't know that we're outpacing the market, because we're still not making we're still not making the level of international superstars that we should, for the quality of material and for the raw material quality that we have. So I think that our structures need some reviewing, so that we can actually be getting. I mean, there are Afrobeat artists that are bigger than most current Jamaican artists. And it's interesting, because there are artists who we call Afrobeat who say they're not Afrobeat. They prefer to be associated with dancehall. So it means that we have something that the world wants to connect with. But in order for that connection to happen, I think there is more work for us to do in setting up our structures, our marketing structures, our distribution structures, and even our production structures. Because issues of intellectual property, issues of borrowing and sharing, issues of strategy, all of these things need to be a little bit more streamlined, I believe, for us to be able to be making a more efficient industry out of what we have.
So that's very interesting, because you're saying that economically we're not outpacing, but production wise we're outpacing. And so GQ made the point of, I think the connection of human evolution with the evolution of music. And so Pat, I want to ask you in terms of the evolution of media coverage for reggae, because we know that a lot of the work that you have done and much of your success has been with helping artists to be successful, to giving them that platform and that voice. What are you seeing in terms of the changes in media reporting as we're evolving?
I feel like there's maybe more opportunities for writers now to write about this music, and yet at the same time, there are not the big stories coming from the music that those of us who have championed it for decades would want to see. And by that I mean, like if we look at something like, the Afrobeats, as was just mentioned, and how Ewan just said that, there are Afrobeat stars who are probably many that are bigger stars than anyone currently coming out of Jamaica. Like, we want to see, one reason people know 90s dancehall, besides how great that music was, we have equally great music today, but one reason people know 90s dancehall is because it had such a push to get it on radio, to get these artists out in this mainstream platforms where people could see them and hear them and know them beyond the core market that follows reggae. So, that's something I just want to see more of, is these great artists who are doing great music today. To me, it's not a question at all of, is the music of a quality as it was back then? Absolutely. And there's so much innovation. And to Abishai's point about fusion, as has been said throughout, that has existed from day one. Reggae is a fusion. It was built upon all these elements that Lloyd mentioned early on. So you have fusion from the get-go. But, as Abishai said, we might have just stopped naming things in the 80s. And that's really true, because dancehall from 1985 does not sound anything like dancehall today, yet it's all dancehall. But that's what happens. But as far as the media goes, I can just say for myself, I just would love to see more of recognition for Jamaica for all that it's given to these genres, such as hip hop, which, of course, the most streamed genre in the US for 2020, a third of every song that was streamed was hip hop, R&B. I would love to see that, premise of the Jamaican sound system identified as the template for what hip hop grew from. Kool Herc, a Jamaican, replicating the sound systems he heard in Trenchtown when he got to Bronx, and he tried to do it with reggae, but the people in the Bronx weren't really having it. So, you know, he went with the R&B and the funk and soul, and, you know, and wanted his MC to talk like the guys he heard back in Kingston on the Sound, you know, and which brings us to, you know, the loss of Roy just last week, you know, rest in peace to the Godfather, who did so much to champion what we know, toasting, DJing, which of course that the Godfather of dancehall, the Godfather of rap in that sense. And yet with his passing, you know, there were some mainstream media coverage, but for his stature, I don't think there was the kind of coverage that I certainly would like to see, given that he is such a pivotal figure in all this music that we know today. And likewise for Afrobeats, I mean, some people say, you know, what is really the difference between Afrobeats and dancehall? Maybe there's a little soca in there, and, you know, not even that gets mentioned. So there is so much of Jamaica in so many of these genres that we're hearing. And especially as someone who just loves music history, I would love to see the Jamaican sound system just continually identified as that space and entity where really everything got its start, from the recording industry to toasting to dubs with King Tubby. And I remember a few years back with Billboard, I did a piece about, it was called Rave, Rap, and the Remix, and it was looking at the sound system roots of EDM. I'm not claiming that Jamaica invented EDM necessarily, but what I am saying is the way it is consumed, with a DJ center stage as the superstar, behind the mic, the live mixing, all of that. I mean, that's King Tubby in 1970. So, you know, as a journalist, I just want to see more props given to Jamaica for all it's given to the world.
And we thank you for being a major conduit to giving the props back to Jamaica. I'm going to ask our producer to just put back up, I believe I Roots and Culture posted something. We are being exposed to so many things. So our need for something new is in high demand. And I think that really does capture a lot of what we've been talking about today from that creative perspective. And then we had another great comment. Does anybody want to weigh in on anything that maybe I has just shared with us? Okay, and so then I'm going to ask for a comment I saw that was by Lloyd. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, Zeke, if we can put that comment up as well. Mystic Vibes TV answers, sometimes there is not cooperation with some of these publicists. So I know we have music managers on our panel, we have publicists, we have A&R and so on. So I'm going to ask either Lloyd or Abishai or Ewan, or a combination of both, to kind of just speak to that piece in terms of the creation and media as well, the cooperation that we get. Someone I was talking to, I believe it was Michael Rose, a couple of days ago, and he said, you know, there are media houses and groups that don't really want to book reggae artists, and he wasn't sure why. There were many different pieces, and I'm wondering if that has anything to do with the cooperation or professionalism and the creativity.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we should shy away from it. There are definitely issues of professionalism within the industry, as within most music industry worldwide. But Jamaica seems to have, you know, its own special dose of it. And so that comes out in terms of our interrelationship within the industry, whether it's managers and artists, or artists and their teams, and publicists and media entities. So that is still a big part of, you know, the work we have to do in terms of improving ourselves as an industry and our relations, how we're working together. I think sometimes we get caught up in thinking that business is about liking everybody that you do business with, or trying to be friends with everybody that you do business with. And we lose sight of the actual business and opportunities where we can actually build something and create economies of scale through working together. And so I think that's kind of the greatest issue for us in that relation, being more professional in our conversations and our approach to the business, especially when dealing with first world. I think sometimes we get very comfortable when we deal with each other and other Caribbean persons or persons from other developing countries. But then when we interface with the first world and we're forced to now bring ourselves to the next level, some of us don't move as fast as we need to. And so that creates the issues. I'm sure that's probably the experience that person who commented had. She probably saw artists rising and reached out for an interview or to help in some way. And the communication itself was probably very difficult to complete. And so it created an issue. I see that comment, Miss Mackenzie. So Destine Media is his publicist. I'll put you in touch. But if you check for Destine Media, she'll make sure that you get that interview done and done in time. But I wanted to make one more point, just to support something that Pat had said in terms of the sound system and trying to bring everything back down to reflect some light on the work of the sound system and the sound system culture. I echo that a whole lot because even in terms of the industry's continued global success, a lot of that comes down to sound system culture and how far that has been entrenched worldwide and the amount of sound systems there are worldwide, where we can still have a reggae artist within a few months of coming to the fore. He has a global audience. Most other genres don't have that. Even within hip hop, some hip hop artists struggle to have a global audience as big as they are in the United States. And it's not the same for us in Jamaica. Most Jamaican acts who get a name, immediately they have a name in Africa, they have a name in Europe, they have a name in America. Even if it's within the diaspora, it's a platform that they can build on in areas that they can make some money. So
good point. So I'm going to ask GQ to jump in here, and I also know that Lloyd wants to talk a little bit about some of the publicity as well. GQ, I saw you nodding, so yes.
Yes. So first of all, the outpacing with that we were talking about with the music, I was talking about the outpacing in Jamaica. It's like amongst ourselves, because basically the music basically took a run, and it's like this competitiveness within Jamaica when reggae music in other arenas, like for instance the Cali Hawaii reggae, that's going on, and the revolutions and Soja and those guys, the simplicity is wild. It's the same type of simplicity from 30-40 years ago, you know what I mean? And they're rocking concerts themselves of 10, 20, 30,000 people. Now what Abishai was saying, the professionality now of the whole thing. You have to remember in the 80s and 90s when basically hip hop was born, a lot of Jamaican artists didn't even have their own publishing. It's like you have to remember that the way things were business wise in the music in Jamaica was so non-existent, at that time, that it's just this leg of artists from the 90s up that even knew what any of that really was, and it's funny because I see it, a lot of my friends that are artists right now, from the Mr. Vegases and whatever else, that when I'm helping them with certain things that I'm realizing now, a lot of these old school guys, that really founded that whole thing with the whole sound system thing. I played a sound too in Jamaica when in the early 90s. The knowledge of the business side of things were just zero.
Good point. Thank you for weighing in. And so, Lloyd, I'm going to ask you, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about the publicity as well.
Yeah, I started an agency 3 years ago that's focused on providing publicity services. And that is something I decided to do after observing what has been happening in Jamaican music for over 30 years. That a lot of the artists and producers, there's a disconnect between those who are creating the music and the media in terms of how they interact with each other. There's so much music being made, and there are so many outlets for media. Everybody who has a computer is a broadcaster. So you have to find ways to manage the flow of your creative output to the right media, because no matter how good your music is, if it's not heard, it goes nowhere. And we have struggled to maneuver between creating and exposing our music. And that is a part of why we have not been able to capitalize on what we have created in the very same way that the reggaetons and the hip hops and the EDMs have been able to take our or some of our creations and take it to a level that is mind-boggling. You know, they have found ways to develop their own connections with the media, to expose what they're doing to their marketplace and outside of their marketplace. So publicity is a key ingredient in this evolutionary process if we want to lift ourselves further from where we are.
Thank you. And that's a really good point. So I'm going to ask Pat to just weigh in a little bit in terms of being part of the media and what's the best way for reggae artists to continue to get their shine, so to speak, and the publicity that is needed for the economic impact. We certainly have the creative power and the creative push, but as we're going to talk a little bit later on, we're going to talk about the business side of it. But how do they connect? How do we close that gap between the creative and the media?
You know, that is a struggle, no doubt, because there are some, you know, I've been writing 31 years about this music, and even with the platforms that I have, there are still some albums, some artists, some ideas that I have that I think I know would make great stories. I know the music is so strong. I know everything is there for a good story, and for whatever reason, an editor will pass on it. And, you know, with budget considerations, especially with 2020 and the year that so many of us have had with being out of work and, you know, with artists touring ceasing and all of these things, it's really hit publishing very hard too. And it's like, you know, the considerations for stories now, it's kind of narrowed a bit. So, but I would say to any artist, like, I remember years back, Sly Dunbar told me like that he and Robbie never say no to interviews. They say they may not be able to do an interview at the time that a writer who approaches them needs it, but they would never say no to any interview because you just never know where it's going to end up. And I would say that to an artist. Of course, everyone wants to be interviewed by the bigger publications, but I mean, I started in the core market. I certainly did not start at a Billboard level or at a Daily Beast level or whatever it is. I started at core market, and I'm really grateful for that experience because, first of all, it gave me a chance to learn my craft a lot better, become more familiar with what I was doing, but also to see the need for journalism devoted exclusively to reggae or the Caribbean, you know, and that's a very important avenue that I would hope all artists will respect and will want to be a part of that. The bigger places will come. Just, you know, do your diligent work and, you know, be willing to do your interview, be engaged and talk about your music. Nobody should be able to sell your music better than you, maybe your publicist, but beyond that, you know, you should want to talk about your music, what it is you're doing, your goals, that sort of thing. And that's a great way to help get yourself out there. And the more those stories build, you know, then perhaps the major publications will come around. Again, this year being very unusual and very, very restricted financially on just about every industry. But I think as time goes on, things will get better and we will see more stories being placed about this music as it was. It seemed to have, you know, a few years back, I know there were many, many stories that I was so proud of being able to get in Billboard because they weren't typical Billboard stories. And, you know, now I think we just have to wait things out a bit until the economy gets stronger and there's more of a place for artists to be placed in these things. I also wanted to mention, though, quickly that we just see the other day that Spotify has now come into Jamaica and across the Caribbean. several African nations. I think we're going to see a change in streaming numbers for reggae and dancehall, as well as Afrobeats and, you know, other genres. And I think that's going to do a lot to help the genres in terms of placement, because we're going to have some numbers to back up. You know, I mean, how we're consuming this music a lot of time is not even being registered like, you know, the way it should be. But now with people can be at home in Jamaica, have their Spotify account, stream whoever they want, and help these artists build up their numbers. So I think that's also going to go a long way to getting higher profile for the artists who are out there.
Absolutely. I so agree with you. And I want to delve into that a little bit more as we go to the part 2 when we talk about business. But before we do that, I believe there were several comments that I saw. Sister Irie, hello. Jamaicans.com, Xavier, hello. How are you? Making a publicist part of an artist team is more successful than counting on publicists to find the artist. And so we have A&R here, we have management, we have IP folks. Does anybody, you know, Abishai, if you're putting a team together, does that include a publicist? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. I can tell you, once I entered the business and got serious about management, one of the first things I did was try and identify good publicists that we could work with. So I would recommend for anybody in the business, once you're putting out material, artist, production house, label, it's advisable that you have a publicist and a good publicist on your team. You know, I always tell people, you know, our success as Baby Rock, as with Kabaka and thing, wouldn't be possible without Destiny Media and the help that we get from them as it relates to publicity and being able to do that in a professional manner. And you know, just having things streamlined in a way that you can do good business. And it's a big part of it. Like Lloyd said, it makes no sense that you make the music and then no one knows. If no one knows that you made the music or can hear it, then you're already lost. You know what I mean? There's no way you're gonna be #1 on iTunes if nobody knows you released the song. And you know, as much as you think you can do a lot of these things yourself as well, you'll find that the more you get into the business, it's better that you do have somebody that is specialized in that area and can focus and take the time each day to build the relationships needed to really execute in the way that you need it. Because one thing is a relationship-based business, and no amount of money can really fix that. It might help for a little bit, but especially in terms of media and getting your story out there, it's very much relationship-based. And so having a good publicist on your team is crucial.
Good one, thank you. And so before we're gonna take a 1-minute break, but before we do that, I'm gonna ask a question for all, because as we're talking about the creative side of the evolution of reggae, is reggae still rebel music? That's the question. So whoever would like to jump in, I don't know, Ewan, do you want to start off?
I don't mind jumping in that at all. Reggae is still rebel music, but reggae is not just rebel music. Reggae has been music for the struggle, equal rights and justice, yes, and it has been the music which has made Jamaica the conscience of the world, but it is also the music that says everything is gonna be all right. It's the music that says, you know, we smile, man. You know, things will be okay. It's that too, and it's the music that says I am still in love with you. Yeah. So it's still reggae music is all of that, and then there's reggae music that speaks to spirituality and speaks to black spirituality and all of that. So one of the things that we must be careful not to do is to lock it in a box and say, if it is not saying this, it is not reggae. You know, we have to be very careful, because the conversation I came and found was one speaking of evolution and a constant development of the music from one genre to the next, from one version to the next. People borrow, people add. You know, I think when I came in, it was Abishai who was talking about that process of what I would call cross-fertilization. It is still alive, and it is a part of the reason. I think it was DJ Q, I think, was talking about the energy because of the competition. The space that we have here, we will produce several different things. We produce dances per day. Now, dances are not going to happen as frequently on just struggle music. It has to be something that's also talking about feeling good, you know, and having a good time. So we need to broaden the discourse in respect of how we define reggae and make sure that people understand that it is feel good as it is equal rights and justice.
Wow. And on that note, I am going to ask all of us to just take a moment and learn a little bit more about our upcoming event right here on Island Space and at Island Space Museum.
Join us and let's make history together. Magic at the Museum, the Island Space Global Launch and Fundraiser, goes live on Sunday, April 11th at 6 p.m. It's a celebration of Caribbean history, culture, and entertainment with a 2021 twist. Learn more at islandspacefl.org/magic and donate today.
And if you're just tuning in, you are tuned into our Reggae Month panel right here at Island Space Caribbean Museum. And we're talking about the evolution of reggae, breaking barriers and crossing borders. And our guests are DJ GQ, Abishai, Hoilett, Patricia, Meschino, Ewan Simpson, and Lloyd Stanbury. And I'm Andrea JohnBaptiste, your host. Thank you so much for tuning in. Before we start the next part, or the part 2 of our conversation, where we really look at the business perspective, money, 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 right? I just want to say a special thank you to our team that make these things happen. Thank you to our sponsors, the Community Foundation of Broward, Grace Foods, Florida Power and Light, the Westfield Broward Mall, because that's where we're located. If you're in South Florida, please come to what folks used to call Broward Mall, now the Westfield Broward Mall in Plantation, home of Island Space Caribbean Museum. We want to say a special thank you to our friends at Jamaicans.com. Xavier, hello, hello, hello. And of course, a warm and thankful shout out to the members of our board, who Lloyd Stanbury, a member of our panel, is our vice president. But we want to say big up to Larry Mullings, Sharice Morgan Joseph, Sharon McLennan, Carl Russell, Tamara Filippo, Clover Thompson, and this show's producer and museum co-founder and executive director of Island Space, Khalib Thompson. And of course, last but never least, our co-founder and board chair, David Sexyman Muir. And we want to say a special thank you also to our panel producer and museum manager, Marjorie Stanbury. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you all for making this happen. And so now we're going to talk a little bit about the business perspective of the evolution of reggae. So, Lloyd, understanding how do we, or artists, both from the production and consumption side, but understand and penetrate that global reggae market, because it is a global market. And as we spoke a little bit earlier about the fact that we are producing, we are creating, but are we being compensated in that way? How do we penetrate so that we are able to be compensated? What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, to talk about the business side of the evolution, I think we should separate the music into 2 parts, the recording industry and the live performance side of things. And as far as the recording industry is concerned, we need to be aware of where the market is going in terms of streaming. I think Pat mentioned earlier, the numbers that are coming out with regard to streaming. One of the main things we need to recognize is that the music industry has rebounded because of streaming. It was going down, and now it's all about streaming. And so we have to prepare ourselves to participate within the streaming space. I think we have been slow to make the necessary adjustments to effectively participate in what is happening with streaming. We have been at a disadvantage for various reasons. We have not developed our own platforms. We have not formed the right kinds of partnerships with the existing platforms to enable us to fully participate in the growth in the recording industry. We have always done well, fairly well, or much better in terms of live performances, going out on the road and so on. But we have a tendency to focus mostly on the North American and European market for our live presentations. And when I say we, I'm referring to reggae coming out of Jamaica. We should recognize that there are challenges and barriers to entry within North America and Europe that are getting even greater. So
and can you speak to those specifics? What are those barriers to entry, particularly in these markets?
Simple things like getting a work permit for the United States. It's expensive. There are new rules that have come into play. You know, the cost. Same thing is happening in the UK. And with COVID, who knows? You know, I mean, what is going to happen in terms of movement? So we need to bear that in mind. We need to think more in terms of shifting to other places that are closer, easier to access, that have faster growing markets like Latin America. So if we reorient our focus on where we want to present our live performances, I think we will do better. And we have to place emphasis on how we get into the streaming world, because that's where it's going. It's not turning back.
Right. So let me ask this, a good segue into what I would like for maybe Ewan to touch on a little bit, because JaRIA, right, I know is committed to education and organizing and advocacy and things of that nature. So how do we create these systems that protect the artists, that help us with the global penetration, but also there's several comments that I've seen that talk about the inequity in terms of pay for the artists, the production through streaming. So what can we do systemically for within our industry, within the genre, so to speak, or the genres?
I understand the impatience that some people have in terms of what they believe to be pennies per stream. But then we need to understand that it's a volume-based industry. And so you're not going to get $1 per stream, or you're not going to get $10 per download. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen as easily as that. You have to move large numbers, and it always was a numbers game. Even when we were analog, when we were selling records, you know, there was a whole system of discounting for breakage and returns and all of these things, and for marketing and publicity and so on. So there was always a sense that the artist was not getting $1 for $1. But as soon as you moved enough in terms of volumes, you were able to benefit. So the systems need to be in place. Now, JaRIA is moving to educate the industry. But of course, we can do so much in educating the industry. If the industry is not looking for the information, because there may be persons who believe that the way they did it is the only way it can be done. You know, there are people who say, "Oh, we don't need no industry; we can function on our own." Until we understand that it is conglomerates that rule the world, and it is teams that always win. We have to get the Jamaican entertainment industry, Jamaican music industry, to coalesce around a philosophy. And that is how we're going to get to move into new markets and break new barriers. The issues that we're having with, for example, with publicists is not a new issue, right? I was having a conversation today with the British High Commissioner, Jesse Royal, and a couple of other people. And they were talking about an absence of good artist managers for the number of artists that are coming out. Because yes, there are people who are managing, but are they trained? Do they understand the principles? You know, do they understand how to be sensitive to a market? Do they understand what a team requires? Right? Abishai was able to transfer his corporate experience into entertainment. How many of the other artist managers who are now in entertainment had corporate experience or understand what it means to be a manager and not just you have a name and you go and you talk for the artist? You know what I'm saying? How do they understand how to put a budget together? How do you understand how to plan? These are all things that are crucial to us being able to monetize what we have as raw talent in large numbers. So what JaRIA is trying to do through its education committee, through a lot of the work that we are doing now and will do even in this COVID time, is to try to get the industry to coalesce around the idea of organization and of education and professionalism.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that is powerful and so absolutely necessary. So I'm gonna, you just pointed out some of the things that, yes, Carl Russell, member of our board of directors, Ewan is hitting it on the head. And I'm gonna ask Abishai to just expound on that because he did transfer his corporate experience into a very productive and successful company as well as artist. So what are some of the things that you can suggest from that team building approach, education for managers and things of that nature?
Of course, but
Best practices.
before I get right into that, I wanted to add something to the point about the DSPs, the streaming sites, like the Spotify's and the iTunes. I think we shouldn't hasten to be apprehensive about them. Like Ewan said, it's a numbers game, and I think it's more beneficial to us if we learn what the system is changing to and how we can align ourselves with it. From what I read into the system, it has actually created more money in the music business generally, and it's really about how savvy we are as producers, as artists, as labels on the business side, how we can benefit in that increased pool. And that's a big part of the work that we have as business people, as people behind the scenes. The new streaming model that is in place, think about it like this: as in the back in the days in the 90s when we would sell CDs, the typical fan would maybe buy 3 CDs for the year, and spend, let's say if they spend $15 on a CD, or album, they spend $45 for the year on music, and then maybe a couple concert tickets. Now with the streaming model, the typical fan who is on Spotify or on iTunes and have subscribed, have an official account, they're paying $10 a month. So that's 12 times 10 versus 45, we're now at 120. So the music business has managed to stretch deeper into people's pockets. We as Jamaicans now, as the reggae industry, have to figure out how do we ensure that our share of that pie, we maintain what it was before and also increase. So that's really the question we have to find. And there are examples of successful teams out there doing it, successful artists, both independent and signed artists. I'll give you one example. There's Russ, who he took the approach of releasing a new song every week, one new song every week, which our Jamaican artists, especially dancehallers, do anyway. But what he did on the other hand, though, was match that back to good business principles with the DSPs. So he didn't have a big marketing budget, but he was able to pitch it, develop his relationship with the DSPs, with Spotify, with iTunes. And there's actually a YouTube video he did where he actually shows his statements like publicly online. You can go and look. And each month you could see the growth in his Spotify statement month on month, where he grew from $0 to over 100,000 US dollars each month from streaming. And this is an independent artist before he had a big label behind him. So I just leave that there in terms of as an example of what the new streaming system can do. But building a team, very important.
Let me just say something before you go into the team. I just want to say what I'm hearing you say is evolve. As the music is evolving, evolve with the business practices and the opportunities that are there as well.
For many of us,
I think I think GQ wanted to
GQ.
just weigh in on that. So I'm going to ask him to do that and go back to the team's question, Abishai, if you don't mind.
Yeah. You see, the thing is, he's right about the team thing, because I always tell people that the music business is a pie, and a team is like, you know, a imperative part of the pie. Imaging, your name, how you push. You know, if you're gonna get a publicist, just like if you're running a pizza shop, you know, you get the best possible publicist to run a pizza shop. You know, with my project, you know, I was referred to Brian Greenspoon as my publicist, you know, and I mean, you know, you know, he does amazing work with reggae placement, you know, or, you know, you do your homework. But the thing is people aren't running the business as a business anymore. They get scared when they hear like, oh, the streaming, oh, I'm not gonna see $5,000 unless, you know, I stream a million records. But, you know, just like, you know, Abishai was saying, is that you have to, it's the package. You have to put everything together. You have to you know, make, you know,
the consistency.
Exactly. It has to, it's a little bit of everything. You know, you have to run it as a business. You can't just pick up tomorrow and say, okay, I'm gonna be a rapper or a DJ, you know, and I'm just gonna make all this money, or, you know, it's gonna just come to me. You know what I mean? You have to put in the footwork. You know, doctors and lawyers don't practice law and medicine, you know, on nights and weekends. You know?
Great point. So Abishai, going back to the teams piece, as GQ just talked about, that it is important. Best practice, what in setting it up, how coming out the gate even for an artist, because, you know, I think it's important. We have established artists that are doing great, not so well in the business pieces, but what are some of the best practices in establishing that team so that we can push towards greater monetization?
Well, the most important thing I always say to all artists, educate yourself on the business. As much as you work on your craft, educate yourself on the business. Producers, same thing. And look for professional relationships. So in a manager, you have to kind of look for the qualities in the person that you find that you want in a manager. So trustworthy, resourceful, being able to make decisions in your interests, and you're not having to worry that they're doing it in their interest. All these things are important, but first and foremost, educate yourself about the business. I can't say that enough. And once you educate yourself about the business, you'll be able to understand the role of a manager. I think in the industry, a lot of times we get confused with what the role of a manager actually is. And so that leads to confusion, and people
And I'm going to ask
shying
you
away from it.
to clarify, because, you know, I hear, I'm not going to call out anybody, but I know even panelists right now
Well,
that used to do artist management and say, I'm not doing that anymore. So what is the role of an artist manager?
like everything else within the business, that has evolved as well over time. For me now personally, I see artist management as a team, a team job really. So even in my personal experience, most artists that I've worked with, I've done it with a co-manager or co-managers as part of a team setup. So with Kabaka, for instance, most people in the industry would also know, like Dwayne, my business partner. So from the beginning, it was very clear to me that in building a team and putting together a team for success, that it would take a lot of people calling on their expertise, but as well as their relationships. I keep coming back to that. That is a very relationship based business. And your success sometimes is very much dependent on your ability to build and maintain solid relationships based on trust, and also people believing in what you're doing and your ability to actually do what you say. And so once we identify that, okay, we have a quote unquote management team in place, it was really to identify the other factors needed for success in the music business. So a publicist, as we know, a legal team in place, accounting team in place, a plan for how we would market what we were doing, how we would publicize it, and how we would then maintain what we were doing. So a lot of the times I find, especially again within reggae, and sometimes I don't want to sound too negative, citing some negative examples, but a lot of the times I find that we get the first part right, But the maintaining now and sustaining and then taking it to the next level, sometimes that's where we fall short. But that's where a team comes into play, because the team is there now to help the artist, to help the producer actually make a plan and figure out how exactly we're going to meet this goal that we have set for ourselves. And whether that means collaboration with others, other artists, other producers, whether that means reinventing what it is that we present to the public. All these things have to be factored into whatever the final decision is. And two heads are always better than one. It's important that you have a decision-making process so that decisions are not drawn out too long, but it's always good to get opinion across the board. We are in an opinion-based music. Music is about what people like. And so the more opinions you have on your team that you can trust in terms of what you decide you put into the public, you're in a better position. If you have a team of people that you can trust everybody's opinion and you can trust that they're not saying things to carry an agenda or push a certain personal point, then it augurs well for everybody involved, that everybody is pulling in the same direction. So, you know, that's a big part of putting together a good team, having that trust that everybody will pull in the same direction from the directives that come from artists, that come from management, in whatever the overall plan is.
And good sharing. So the publicist, legal, marketing, accounting, put the team together. Two heads are better than one. I'm gonna ask Lloyd to just wait in on a minute. But if Khalif can just put back on the screen for us, I believe Lincoln Chain had a question that I think I want to throw out to the panel. How do you build a team if you're making good music but not making any money? But I think that is the question of the hour. Lloyd. Pat. Okay. Yes, please
answer, but just something related. You know, for an artist to make money, at the very least, they need some kind of exposure of their music. And this is an appeal to people on radio, to people, and it's not just, it's in Jamaica, it's in the diaspora. Give artists a chance. I mean, there are the names that are the big names, of course, and they get their play, and deservedly so. They've worked to get that. They're having their moment. That's wonderful. But please give artists a chance. And when an artist you don't know gives you a CD or gives you a thumb drive or however, a link to a song, listen to it. Try to find a place for it. Try to find 5 minutes in your program to talk to him or her about who they are, what they do, where they come from, why they're here. You know, this is something that can help the artist to grow, to be able to afford that publicist and that manager and get on a few shows. To show promoters, please give some different artists a chance to. Again, everybody wants the headliners, understandably so. Sell the tickets, but when you have those people on who sell the tickets, put in a few acts. I know I haven't been to Jamaica for this year because of COVID, but I'm a regular visitor to Jamaica at all the events. There are just the country is so blessed in terms of its music. There are so many talented people. There are the people we all know, and then there are the people we don't know, and you hear them and oh my goodness, listen to this guy or this woman. They're just fantastic. You know, please give these people a chance. We all, we want to see this industry grow. It grows. The more people successful, the better. And you're really helping. And it's a service, it's a service to your country and to your music by helping people, giving them a chance. It doesn't cost you anything, and it shouldn't cost you anything to play good music, and it shouldn't cost an artist to get their music played. But that's another issue for another time. And I'm not saying
I don't know if we're going to address that part of the business tonight.
We all have platforms. Let's all of us who care about this music, let's use our platforms to further what we're ready to expose more people who are doing great things and give them a platform so they can begin to make a living from their art.
Absolutely.
But
And
I want to say,
just one second,
yes.
Ewan. I believe I'm bobbling and I'm doing the thumbs up because I certainly support, because I do believe that media, we are gatekeepers as well as influencers, and it's very important. And so, you said if there's a song, and we do on our show, names you should know because they have great music, and you should know these people's names because the music is bomb.com, as I would say. And often them not have no name, so to speak, but they have great works. And so to hear that, I just am so particularly thankful for you sharing that today, because that is a true part of what I believe in terms of music, and giving particularly these artists out of the Caribbean a chance. So, and I'm sorry, I'm off my platform. I'm
No,
off
that's
my
fine.
soapbox.
No, that's fine. That's fine. The other part of the same point though is that artists who have no money and are creating great music need to also understand that the music that they are creating is that collateral that they are going to use to pull together a team that believes in the collateral. But the artist has to also be prepared to share that collateral.
Absolutely.
So if you have no money and you want somebody who is a publicist to come on board, and you want someone who's a stylist to come on board, and you want a creative director to come, and you want an artist manager to come, but there is no funding, you are going to have to be prepared to offer a share of what you have as collateral, which is your music. And you have to offer that to the team, and you have to mean it. At the first sign of success, you can't jump ship and decide, okay, I'm my thing, and all suddenly now it's yours. When you had no money, it was ours. But when you see a few dollars start to trickle, suddenly it is mine.
Right.
All successful artists globally have teams, and the majority of them have kept their team together, which is the recipe for success. It is not that you jump ship every time and you're switching from here to there and left and right. Right? So artists also need to understand that it is, I mean, Abishai spoke to management being about teams, but the success of the artist is about the team that is invested in the artist widely, not just management, the legal team, the finance or accountants, that team that decides how we find money, where we find it, what we do with it, how we manage it, how we pay taxes, how we ensure that we avoid and not evade. All of these things, because the house can come tumbling down if those little things are not done. So we need a broad team who is dealing with music, because it may be that the manager is musical, but is the manager the right person to advise you on what is to happen with your productions? So do you have a producer on the team who can speak to the finer details of production and why certain things are not happening? Do you have a vocal trainer? Bring people on the team who can help to ensure that you are ready if this is what you're investing in as your life.
Prom. And so on that note, because our time is winding down, we have about 13 minutes left. And so we've seen a lot of great comments come across the screen. And we thank you for all of you that are tuned in on Facebook, on Instagram, and on YouTube, Jamaicans.com. So let's take a moment. Let's go to questions. And so I'm going to ask for the questions to be put on the screen. So Nigel Campbell asks a question for anyone. Would a pan-Caribbean reggae push be a preferred push? We see that non-Jamaicans having significant share of the reggae chart statistics and sales in markets we desire. Would a Trinidad or Latin American reggae act get a push from Jamaica that just recognizes the music instead of the country? Oh, wow. That's a loaded question.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. It's a question and a point, in my view. We have struggled as a region to do things together. This is something myself and Nigel have spoken about on several occasions in the past. But I agree. I think if we were to collectively approach how we do our music as a region, we could find quite a bit more success. Um, there are a lot of artists throughout the Caribbean who are having the same experience that we're having in Jamaica. And the Caribbean itself is a fairly big market, but it is fragmented, as is the Jamaican market. So yes, I think, Nigel, that if we were to pull together regionally, to move this forward, we would have a greater impact, not just in the Caribbean, but it would enable us to step across into Latin America, which, as I said before, Latin America is the fastest growing music market in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to stop thinking that it's all about the United States and Europe. So if the Caribbean can get itself together, it's very easy for us to move into Brazil, Mexico, Colombia, Argentina, and we could grow what we're doing just in that area. And Africa,
But
where we don't have all of these issues about visas and work permits, and we do have them, but they are not the same barriers that we're facing try to get to Europe or North America.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like
You wanted to weigh in?
that there are 18 million people resident in the Caribbean.
More than 18 million.
No, that was the last check, which was probably 5 years ago.
Cuba alone have 12 million people.
Right? So after you look at that and you look at the diaspora, which is usually two times what is resident.
It's big.
If we could harness that as a base market, and it doesn't matter if it's Trinidad or it is Barbados or if it's Guyana or Grenada, it doesn't matter. If we are pushing musical forms from the region and we say, okay, we are going to use our sheer numbers. Just think, I made this point about 10 years ago to an executive from one of our telecommunications providers, and I said, if we used the power of numbers for the number of markets that you are in and the number of subscribers that you have, if you use that influence, you could have made 2 or 3 superstars every year. But there is no system and there is no philosophy that says, let's do that and change the world. Because the truth is, you don't have to carry a superstar for 5 years, If you get somebody to the right numbers, they carry themselves after that. It's up to them to sink or swim. But what we do is a system which takes
you a very good point there,
and then graduates you.
I think you're making a very good point there, and I'm not afraid to call names. We have started something called D-Music at Digicel, which I think is a very good move in the right direction. But I think D-Music needs to expand way beyond what it is now offering. Its reach as well as the product and service offerings that it has, and that's a perfect way for us to bring this Caribbean, or to grow this Caribbean market that we're talking about. That would put us in a place where we can expand everything, our recording industry as well as our live music industry. I want to commend Digicel, and I'm not knocking them, but I think D-Music, which is their platform that they have established, it's a good first step, but that we need to expand D-Music to the point where, it can allow us to grow the music industry of the region. The technology companies are driving the music industry around the world, and Digicel should see itself as no different, And
well, they need to decide what the philosophy of the music is in the first place. Because is it about advertising Digicel, or is it about making an impact in an industry that then cements the brand otherwise? Sometimes the route to the objective is critical.
Wow. So it sounds like we're going to have to reconvene another panel because there are some hanging things that are out there. I think we were talking about some pay to play. We're talking about, the route and the objectives and so on. But our time is winding down. It's funny how time flies when you're having fun and being educated, huh? And so thank you so much, Carl. Yes, very inspiring. And we got lots of high energy right here in this virtual space. And so to wrap us all up, I'm going to ask, as we looked at the evolution of reggae, breaking barriers and crossing borders as a part of this Island Space Caribbean Museum and Reggae Month, starting on the bottom right, I think that's the right hand, on my screen, DJ GQ, I'm going to ask you, and the question is for everybody, but what is the one thing that you want to see now in this evolution process? What's your thing?
The opportunity for more reggae artists outside of Jamaica. Because if you notice, all of the big records, well, at least 99% of them, if you don't break from Jamaica, you really don't have a chance. You can count on one hand how many people have actually broke in reggae outside of Jamaica. It's like to the point where you have people here and they have to go back to Jamaica to reinvent themselves before they have hits. The thing is, that's why when you guys were talking about the Caribbean joining, I see that great for the Caribbean, but Jamaica now, is a whole nother thing because, again, too, that competitiveness that we have amongst ourselves, that it just doesn't let in people. Like, you might see a random person like Collie Buds get a win here, or, like one or two people like Hood Celebrity in New York. But, just the reggae market just doesn't let in people like that, That'd be nice to see as a growth, in the future.
Thank you. So out of Miami, GQ says he want to see more artists bust from other places that's not just Jamaica. Did I get that right?
Yeah, Jamaican, but just at least Jamaican people elsewhere, that are able
in other areas. Yeah. Lloyd Stanbury, OD, Vice President of Island Space Caribbean Museum Board of Directors. What is your one thing?
I want to go back to the point that was made by Nigel, who sent his question in. I think, if we try to pull together as a region in the Caribbean, that is what I would like to see happen. I think that would place us in a much stronger position to compete.
Okay. Unity, oneness, unity, collective security for short is what I'm hearing Lloyd Stanbury say as his one thing. Did I get that right, Lloyd?
Yes.
Thank you. Abishai Hoilett, Chairman of Reggae Month for JaRIA and Artist Manager. What is your one thing?
All right. Director JaRIA Reggae Month Committee. Slight correction, but we give thanks. My one thing I would like to see, I would keep it in the same line of Reggae Month and unity. I love to see the platform, how it has developed and grown over the years. And I think it can be one of the solutions to some of the problems we identified today in terms of bringing people together as we came together tonight to discuss and look for solutions. I use one example in parting. We spoke a lot tonight about the DSPs and the Spotifys and the Apples and the iTunes. And I think it shouldn't be ignored that for Reggae Month, a lot of them did official Reggae Month programming on their worldwide sites, not just the sites that were sent to the Caribbean or sent to Latin America. So if you go on Tidal's homepage right now, there's a full Reggae Month promotion going on. The same with some other DSPs as well. I won't give them any more free advertising. But I'm making the point that out there in the world, it is seen as big business. And if it's not there yet, it's seen as potential big business. And it's for us in the industry who are putting in the work to get behind what we're doing. To create these platforms and institutions that will allow us to benefit from what's happening in the wider music industry.
Okay. Organized and centralized, just to sum it up, is what I'm hearing you say also, Abishai. Give thanks for that. And Pat Meschino, award-winning author and music journalist from contributor to Billboard Magazine and Billboard.com. What is your one thing, my media friend?
There's two things. First of all, I just want to say thank you again for having me here tonight. It was a wonderful discussion, and I'm just so proud to have participated. But I want to see, as the music evolves, we still have an ongoing, a greater and deeper acknowledgement of all that came before, this rich canon of music and diversified canon of music that came before, just constant, re-looking and re-evaluating and re-examining and just bigging up of these icons who paved the way to allow us all to even be here tonight having a discussion about this music. That's one thing. And as we, hopefully are easing out of these COVID restrictions, as tourism begins to open up again. I know Jamaica is open and, flights are going on, but I know there are issues with all of that. Once these things resume, I would love to see a much tighter union between tourism and reggae music, because the infrastructure Jamaica has for promoting the music right there on the island is not fully utilized to the capacity that it could be, not nearly, and just want to say big up to Reggae Month too. I've attended many times over the years, unfortunately not this year, but it's a wonderful initiative. I love what you're doing, and I love to see the growth each year. So hopefully 2022 get the chance to be back again. But as someone, perhaps because I'm not born and raised in Jamaica, as someone who stayed in these fabulous properties that Jamaica has all across the island, you see, so much thought goes into how they look and the amenities they offer. The music is just an afterthought. Well, we put on a station that's playing like American music 24/7. And I mean, I think you're seriously undervaluing what the average tourist will accept. I'm not including myself in that because of obvious reasons. I've worked in this music 30 years, but someone's in Jamaica, they took the time to fly there. They want to be open to hearing Jamaican music, and there is music for every mood. And your lounge will be one thing, and your outdoor setting by the pool with the games going on is something else. And then your live show, again, you have an island full of artists. And I would love to see the bigger name artists say, you know what, I want to do this to help. So I'm not going to charge my top dollar that I would charge when I go to New York to do a show. But for this hotel, I will, make an arrangement. I'll come in and do something to help give some publicity to what these hotels are trying to do. So I would love to see a greater marriage between music and tourism in Jamaica. It's there already, but I want it to go deeper and more multifaceted.
Your two things are appreciate the rich history and do more of a collaborative effort of tourism and reggae for the economic as well as the creative perspectives and evolution of the music.
Because some of these hotels are as big as 5,000 people staying inside, and they don't have anything to do. So imagine you bring in an artist and there's a real show. Artist has his CD or her CDs in the back of the room, and posters and information and all kinds of things. That's a lot of new fans to be made when they go home, tell their friends. So when you're visiting their town on tour, they're coming out to your shows. It's a potential for so much more, and it's all there. It just has to be connected. And I've often thought if I lived in Jamaica, that would be like a side job. I would at least try it. And I know that.
And Pat, not to cut you off, but I do have to cut you off, unfortunately, because we are running out of time. But I want to say this. Now you've just added the third topic for our next convening of one of these panels. And I thank you so much for that insight. And last but definitely not least, Ewan Simpson, attorney and chairman of the Jamaica Reggae Industry Association. What is your one thing, if we can get it in 1 minute or less?
A success philosophy. That's it.
Oh, wow. Less than a minute. We thank you so much. And I'm Andrea JohnBaptiste. I am excited and still excited and thankful for this great panel of industry leaders, industry insiders, and for you who've tuned in tonight on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Jamaicans.com. We appreciate you and we hope that you will join us on April 11th for our virtual event, or virtual launch, and fundraiser, Island Space, a place where Caribbean cultures unite. Good night.
Join us and let's make history together. Magic at the Museum, the Island Space Global Launch and Fundraiser, goes live on Sunday, April 11th at 6 p.m. It's a celebration of Caribbean history, culture, and entertainment with a 2021 twist. Learn more at islandspacefl.org/magic and donate today.